Montessori refined her theory of child development through decades of observing and working with children in cultures throughout the world. And what Montessori saw is that development occurs in 4 distinct stages, each about 6 years in length, starting at birth and ending around the age of 24. She called these stages planes of development. Each plane builds upon the foundation of the previous plane, but is marked by distinct developmental differences. These differences are so distinct and so profound that Montessori actually called the emergence into a new stage of development a rebirth. We've got a new child with new characteristics and new developmental needs. So because we've got this new child, each plane of development requires a slightly different approach and a different learning environment. And it's through these observations that Montessori was able to develop plans that, uniquely met the needs of each developmental plane. So the child is different in each of these stages of development. So the environment we have the child within has to be different. We have to have things that are going to respond to those developmental needs. And we have to remember that while we are going to lay some foundations in prior planes, each plane is also its own distinct time, so we can really meet a child's needs within that plane. So let's talk about the first plane of development from birth to age 6. The child has a massive developmental task ahead of them. This child goes from a relatively helpless, individual newborn to a 6-year-old who can walk and talk and understands their culture and the relationships within it. That's a profound developmental task in 6 short years. There's some particular developmental characteristics that support the child in the task of creation at this age. They have what Montessori called an absorbent mind that takes in everything around them, and sensitive periods that highlight some areas of developmental focus at different ages. And our environments then respond to these characteristics of the child to support their self-construction at this stage of development. Now, around the age of 6, we see a shift. The mind is no longer absorbing information. The mind becomes a reasoning mind. They're asking questions of why, and they want to know more. This mind of the 6 to 12-year-old is ignited by imagination, by thinking of things beyond what they can see and touch. They're focused on intellectual independence. They want to gain a lot of knowledge and know how the world works. So we see that we need an environment that changes, that supports this new child who has emerged. Now, around the age of 12, we see another new child emerge. There's another rebirth into the 3rd plane of development. And in this plane of development, we see developmental shifts again. The child is, going through a passage to physical, emotional, psychological adulthood. And there's a lot of, developmental activity going on, a lot of creativity and change going on in the child. They feel very connected to their social group. They're trying to figure out where they belong in broader society. There's a social independence that's the focus at this age. And around the age of 18, we have another shift in their development, a new plane. And in the 4th plane of development, we see a young adult who is trying to firmly find their place in society, focus on their area of specialization, see how they're going to fit into the broader culture. And the focus is what Montessori called economic independence, that by the end of this plane, we have an adult who can live and contribute within society. What Montessori hoped is when a child has been supported in their self-construction optimally through each of these stages of development, the adult who emerges knows themselves knows the society around them, feels a strong sense of responsibility to society and a sense of belonging and how they can contribute. And this was Montessori's hope for a more peaceful and collaborative society.